Thank you very much, and I too want to say thank you to AMSA for this opportunity to come and speak about a very important sector that is here in BC and across Canada and the world. Like my introduction, I have been an early childhood educator for 22 years, and I remember the first few days of my experience of being an early childhood educator. I thought, this would be a great career until I had my own families and be a great job. And it wasn't until I really dove deep into the experiences and what it meant to be an early childhood educator and how important that is, not only for the children and families I serve, but also for the communities as a whole. So early childhood education actually has a huge impact on every other industry in this province, and that's and is also one of the biggest social service industries in British Columbia. So we have been around in British Columbia for 45 plus years now. We don't only look at childcare in our sector, but also how the sector itself, or the people working in the sector, actually are integrated into many job opportunities. So in education, you might see early childhood educators working in Strong Start programs or as a childcare worker alongside of other teachers. They might be working as family support workers, community tables like Success by Six, and also in childcare. We are a member-based organization, and to make it clear, we are not government, which many people confuse us with, but we receive fundings through foundation and from government grants. I thought too, how best could we describe, because children and families that are new to BC are highly supported. Typically, one of the first supports they receive are with early childhood educators when they come into our country. And those first 5 years have long-lasting impacts for years to come. There's also a whole new dynamic of people who are entering this province into our workforce. And it is important, we have realized the importance of the workforce in representing the children and families who are in our care. There are a few areas that childcare does come into play. That families may choose, or people may choose, to open their own family childcare program, work in a nonprofit center. There might be a privately owned center, are also privately owned profit centers. So ECEBC itself does a variety of different ways to support the sector. We do community outreach and engagement, so this is throughout the province, to really understand and value the importance of the early years. We have local branches that support the workforce, about 20 branches now representing in BC that do a variety of activities to highlight our work and particularly educate the public on the importance of the early years. We support not only people that have finished their education, but also students, instructors, or interested individuals who are interested in becoming part of a sector so diverse and diverse throughout our province. We do maintain really close provincial, national, and international connections, and it's interesting to note that here in BC, we are being viewed as some of the most recent innovative practice and research that is happening through our partners out at UVic or UBC. And it's been very, very important for us as a sector to maintain those strong connections and to see how the world is viewing us, and also to learn lessons from international and national partners. We do have strong connections with government, primarily our provincial government, and that makes our job a lot easier when we are working with individuals who are trying to navigate a very fragmented system of early childhood education, where we find the early years in a variety of different ministries. So when people do enter the sector, it does become difficult. So for us, it's been an important piece to maintain our connections and our collaboration with government so that that does become easier for the sector as a whole. Oops, I went too far. So we do offer a lot of professional development because we do feel education is key to maintaining high quality programs throughout the province. We do that through our conference. We have 4 times a year a journal comes out. We have professional development that happens locally and provincially. So I'd like to set the context of what's happening here in Canada and then move into BC. So we know that here in Canada that Canada is one of the most rich countries. Oh, I'm way ahead of myself. Here we go. Oh, and it's cut off. So here in BC, Canada is one of the most wealthiest countries in the world, and I see that the slide was cut off, but it wasn't cut off here, but you can see that Canada is still one of the most wealthiest countries here in the world. And when we look at what is our investment in the early years, we are the least on our statistics. So that has had huge complications for us as a sector because the dollar investment has been so low. So Canada ranks last. And then we look at international access. How does Canada rank? Again, Canada is last, not by a little bit, by a lot. So families that are trying to access high quality early learning experiences for their children, this becomes a huge issue. So when talking to my partners when we look at childcare here, particularly in BC, our partners at the Ministry of Children and Family Development who keep statistics and also offer a childcare operating fund. So here in BC, you can see that we have over 100,000 childcare spaces that are funded. So over 100,000 children every single day in this province are accessing licensed childcare. In total of these spaces, there's over 5,000 licensed family and group homes that are funded through that funding. And we have over 14,000 certified early childhood educators in the province and just about 6,000 early childhood assistants in this province, which I'll talk a little bit about. We know here in BC, BC mothers whose youngest children is age 3 to 15 have the lowest labor force participation in Canada, and BC's mothers whose youngest children is 2 and under have the second lowest participation rate. And so those numbers are kind of staggering for us when we're trying to support a sector to support all those families, but it also shows the need for high quality employees that will be needed not only now but in the future. So in 2012, an estimated close to 600,000 children from ages 0 to 12 and were ages 0 to 12, and 274,000 of these children were under the age of 6. We anticipate a high number of growth of children is projected in the coming years in British Columbia and BC. And again, BC has approximately just over 100,000 childcare spaces. And so we know that there's only enough spaces in British Columbia in licensed facilities for 1 out of 5 children that are needing it right now. And we know that there's going to be a huge growth of children in this province. You can see some of our most recent statistics here in BC. The average medium gross hourly wage is $17 an hour, with program directors making about $20 an hour. So we also work at trying to advocate and build the sector to have a better wage and benefits for the sector itself. And this is where it gets really confusing, particularly from people who are not from this province, is what is government's role. So you can find early care and learning services in a variety of different ministries. The Ministry of Children and Family Development, who has the registry that certifies early childhood educators, also certifies early childhood assistants. So those are people that might have one course, can receive ECE course, can receive an assistant license as they continue on to to become certified with their full early childhood education certificate. They also have an investigation process, and they also look at the education, looking at what post-secondary institutes need to offer. The Ministry of Health, they hold the legislation they look at the health and safety and the staffing regulations for the programs for the actual facility sites. The Ministry of Education is mandated to look at the early years, so you can see that the early childhood education actually falls in 3 different ministries, and more recently the government has developed a new office, the Provincial Office for the Early Years, and this is also to help coordination within government with all these different services provided. The Ministry of Children and Family Development, which is probably our closest governing body that we work with, actually does, which is really important for this group here, has a list of recognized educational institutions offering early childhood programs. So I know you'll be receiving this PowerPoint, but this is the link for that, and it's really important for any of your people coming to talk to you about this, that they actually are if they are considering going into an early childhood program, that they actually do look at this list, because there's many offshoots that really aren't valid within BC, so people will spend lots and lots of money to take the ECE courses, but then they cannot get licensed in British Columbia. And then if you're applying for the early childhood education or the ECEA certificate, the assistant certificate, they also have right on their website the forms there, and you can make phone calls and have direct contact on how that process works. Within the Ministry of Health, the BC Childcare Licensing Regulation is what every childcare program will fall under. The manager, they have many regulations, but for here I focused on manager-employee regulations, how many licensed early childhood educators you need, what kind of educations they need, that they do need their first aid, they will be required to perform a criminal record check, and that all goes through the Ministry of Health and through the Ministry of Children and Family Development. And then also, when we look at newcomers coming to our province or even outside of our province, the credentialing and certification is done through the Ministry of Children and Family Development. We do have some support, some resources. When we actually did have a sector council, a childcare sector council, they produced a resource to look at the different credentialing throughout Canada. So this is another issue that our association has had to deal with, is that each province itself is accredited differently throughout the different provinces. So somebody might move to Ontario, get their credentialing, then come to BC, and it will be different. So they do have that listed out under that link there. And then also within our own ministry, the Ministry of Children and Family Development, when people are moving to Canada or have moved here, they actually have a long list of different education institutes from across the world that they will actually look at how that credentialing might fall into our own credentialing and support people through that process. So maybe they might not have to take all the same courses over again. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. So ECEBC supports the sector as well. We have a job posting boards right on our website that actually connects with 2 other ones, with the West Coast Childcare Resource Center, who also has a job posting board, and with the BCACS, the BC Aboriginal Childcare Society. So there's a long list of provincial job postings throughout this province. Our organization also provides bursary and scholarships for different areas. Right now we actually have a bursary that we are running with the support of the Ministry of Children and Family Development for anyone that's living here in BC wanting to take early childhood education courses. But that money will be expended quite shortly, so we're hoping government will reestablish that. But we've had lots of people apply for that and used it. Again, the support, so if people are having issues on navigating the system, we're there to support that navigation and get them connected to the correct people. And professional development opportunities in many areas of child development and understanding current philosophies and practices. We also work closely with our governments on occupational standards. So those are standards that guide the sector on policy and practice. What we must know to be able to do to be considered a standard of quality. So we really work on the quality of the educator and what that means for the quality of the programs they're working in, as well as ethics. So ECEBC has our own early childhood ethics that has 8 guiding principles that we really hold close to the work that we do. We have many other partners that we do this work with, including post-secondary institutes, the Provincial Childcare Resource and Referral Programs, BC Aboriginal Childcare Society, AMSA, Canadian Childcare Federation, and the BC Family Childcare Association. That does offer many people the beginnings and the middles and the ends of what early childhood education means. So if there's a good place for people to enter into the sector to really know what it means to get into this career, we do partner really closely, and those are just a few of the many that we do. I have included some helpful resources, but I won't go into those because you'll get those. But I really want to bring forward what it means to be an early childhood educator, because often in my practice or over the years I've heard this is the sector that if you can't do anything else, this is what you should do or you could do. You have children, so this is a good thing. But what we do know from research and evidence is that those 5 first years are some of the most important times in a child's life, in a person's life, and in a community's life. So to be an early childhood educator just doesn't mean that you just like kids, but it means that you take this really seriously. And so we want to make sure that people that are coming into this sector have an enthusiasm for children, because it won't work. And we lose qualified staff, not as difficult as the truckers, I guess, after losing most of their staff after 12 months, but after 5 years we lose about 50% of our staff because of the value that's placed on this profession, or the lack of value, so we're trying to change that. But we want people that have enthusiasm for children. You need to have patience, you need to have humor, you need to have really strong communication skills, you have to have respect for differences and the diversity of our province. You need to be creative and flexible, and most importantly, you need to have the highest standards of ethical practice, because what we do today really does set a standard for the rest of the profession. So thank you very much for having me here today, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions.